He slid the divorce papers across the mahogany table, like he was doing her a favor. "Sign it, Amara," Victor said, leaning back in his chair with that slow, satisfied smile cruel men wear when they think the room belongs to them. "Take the car, take the jewelry, and stop pretending you ever belonged in my
your
world."
name now. He has
His
no
mother
claim.
lowered her teacup
It's done.
and nodded like she was watching justice at work. The woman beside Victor, the one he had been far too close to for far too long, crossed her legs and smirked without even trying to hide it. Amara did not touch the papers. She didn't reach for the pen. She didn't cry. She only looked past Victor's shoulder toward the bank director standing near the window. Because 20 minutes earlier, that man had leaned close and whispered 4 words that changed the shape of the entire room. She owns the debt. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a person smile too early? Have you ever watched someone celebrate while the ground was already opening beneath their feet? Because that was Victor. He thought he was ending a marriage. He had no idea he was signing away the last illusion of power he had left. Rain streaked the glass behind them, turning the Atlanta skyline into smudged silver. It was the kind of morning that made rich people feel dramatic. The kind of morning people like Victor liked to choose for endings. Private conference room, expensive lawyers, polished table. Witnesses arranged like furniture. He wanted a stage. Cruelty always does. Victor tapped the papers with one finger. "Don't make this difficult. You've had a good run, more than most women in your position ever get." Your position. Listen to that. Not your name, not your heart, not your years. Your position. As if she had been a guest in her own life. Amara finally looked at him, calm and level. "Are you finished?" He laughed. Actually laughed. That annoyed him more than shouting ever could have. Calm has a way of insulting insecure people. It reminds them that all their noise is still not enough to move you. "Finished?" Victor said. "Amara, I'm just getting started. You should be thanking me. I gave you my name. I gave you status. I brought you into rooms you would never have seen on your own." Across the table, his lawyer looked down. That's how you know when a man is lying, by the way. Not when his voice rises, when the honest people around him stop looking up. Victor's mother, Evelyn, folded her hands over a pearl clutch and sighed through her nose. "Sign the papers, dear. Dignity is easiest to keep when one leaves quietly." And there it was, the family voice. Clean, elegant, poisonous. The kind that cuts without ever sweating. Amara turned her eyes toward Evelyn for only a second, not long, just enough to let the older woman feel seen. Then she looked back at the papers. Divorce terms, non-disclosure clauses, property settlement. A mercy package, really. That was how Victor wanted it framed. A generous exit for the woman who had stood beside him while his company bled in silence and his ego fed on lies. He thought she was cornered. He thought she had stayed quiet because she had nowhere to go. But quiet and trapped are not the same thing. Remember that. Some people are silent because they are weak. Some people are silent because they are counting. Victor had never learned the difference. He pushed the pen toward her. "Go on." Amara picked it up at last, not to sign, just to feel the weight of it in her fingers. Then she set it back down. The woman beside Victor let out a soft laugh. Wow, she really thought this was still a negotiation. Amara looked at her. Not angry, not wounded, just curious, the way you might look at a person who walked into the wrong room and sat down like they owned it. "And you are?" Amara asked. That hit harder than an insult would have. The woman's smile tightened. Victor cut in fast. "This is Celeste. She's part of the new advisory team." A lie. A lazy one. Everyone at that table knew it. Celeste's lipstick was too bold for corporate. Her hand had been on Victor's wrist before the meeting started, and the only thing she had ever advised him to do was believe he was bigger than his own collapse. Amara gave one small nod. Of course. Victor hated that answer too. He hated every answer that did not kneel. You need to understand who Victor was before this moment makes sense. He was not born cruel. Men like that rarely are. They are usually born afraid. Victor Mensah came from a family that had once been spoken of with respect in the city. His father built a real estate firm during a time when people still believed big offices meant permanent power. Glass towers, land deals, handshakes over steak dinners. The kind of wealth that photographs well and debts hide under. By the time Victor inherited the company, the shine was still there. The strength was not. Properties were over-leveraged. Loans were stacked on top of loans. Old prestige was being used to cover new weakness. But the house still looked expensive from the street, and for some people, that is all that matters. Victor grew up learning two lessons. Never look small. Never let people know you are sinking. Those lessons ruin a lot of men. Because once image becomes survival, truth starts to feel like death. Amara entered his life at exactly the wrong time for him, and the perfect time for his illusion. He met her at a charity gala downtown. She wore black. No diamonds. No dramatic introduction. No attempt to sparkle. She spoke only when spoken to and left early. Victor noticed her because she did not notice him enough. That always hooks a certain kind of man. He chased her because he thought she was different. Then he married her because he thought she was safe. Do you hear the danger in that? Not loved. Safe. Safe means she won't compete. Safe means she won't expose me. Safe means I can feel tall beside her. Amara had seen the warning signs even then, but she ignored them for one simple reason. She was tired. Tired of rooms that loved her balance sheet more than her face. Tired of men who asked what she owned before they asked what she believed. Tired of performing power every hour of every day. So when Victor met her as simply Amara Okoye, quiet consultant, no headlines attached, no interviews, no family office mentioned, she let him. For the first time in years, she wanted to know what someone would do with her if they thought she was ordinary. There is a dangerous kind of hope in that question, because sometimes the answer teaches you more than betrayal ever could. Now here is what Victor never knew. Amara had not built her life loudly. She did not need to. She had learned that lesson from her father long before she learned it from business. When she was 12, her father gave her a small brass key with no lock attached. She asked him what it opened. He smiled and said, "Not every key is for a door. Some are for your mind." When people close rooms on you, remember this. Quiet hands build doors, loud mouths never see. Quiet hands build doors, loud mouths never see. That sentence stayed with her. Years later, after he died and left far less money than people assumed, it became the spine of her life. She worked in silence. She bought small assets nobody respected, warehouses no one wanted, logistics contracts people thought were boring, cold storage routes, freight systems, distribution rights, nothing glamorous. everything essential. That is another mistake flashy people make. They laugh at the pipes and worship the fountain. They don't understand the whole city goes thirsty when the hidden parts stop working. Amara understood hidden parts. She built a holding group so discreet most people never even learned her name. While Victor was networking at rooftop bars and rehearsing confidence in mirrored elevators, Amara was buying the rails under the train tracks he thought he was standing on. By the time he married her, she was already wealthier than everyone in his circle combined. But she had one rule. No one got access to that truth until they earned access to her. Victor never did. At first, marriage covered the cracks. He liked introducing her. My wife is so grounded. My wife is so simple. My wife doesn't care about money. Notice how men sometimes compliment women by shrinking them. Grounded often means silent enough not to challenge me. Simple often means I have not bothered to understand her. Doesn't care about money often means I assume she doesn't know more than I do. Amara heard every layer and stayed still. She was not trying to win the room. She was studying the structure. And structures always reveal where they are weakest. The company got worse. Victor got meaner. That almost always happens when a man can no longer bully reality. He turns to people. Little comments at dinner became sharp remarks in front of guests. She's not built for business. She doesn't understand how the world works. She means well, but strategy isn't really her language. And the room would laugh, because rooms are cowards when money is still wearing a suit. Evelyn encouraged it. Mothers like her call it protecting the family. What they really mean is protecting the hierarchy that keeps them comfortable. Then came Celeste. You already know the type. Beautiful in the way ambition can borrow beauty for a while. Quick smile, quick eyes, always standing close enough to look chosen. She worked for a restructuring firm that had been circling Victor's company for months. She smelled blood long before Victor admitted he was bleeding. She told him exactly what failing men love to hear. You are underappreciated. You are too big for the people around you. You deserve someone sharper, someone who matches your future. That line right there has emptied more homes than poverty ever did. Someone who matches your future. As if loyalty counts for nothing the moment vanity walks in wearing perfume. Amara saw it all. The late messages, the hidden screens, the rehearsed lies told too calmly. She also saw the books, and the books told the deeper truth. Victor's company was out of time. The lenders were not bluffing anymore. A default event sat just 1 quarter away. One more missed covenant. One more failed extension. One more breath, maybe. Then something happened Victor never knew. One of the lead debts holding his father's empire together was quietly purchased through a private vehicle. Not by a rival, not by the bank director, not by Celeste's people, by Amara. She didn't do it to destroy him, not at first. She did it because she knew the collapse would hurt hundreds of employees who had nothing to do with Victor's pride. Secretaries, managers, drivers, maintenance teams, leasing staff. Families tied to paychecks richer people never think about. She bought the debt to control the damage. That's what real power does. It thinks beyond the ego in the room. But control is a dangerous thing. Once you hold the paper, you hold the truth no one can sweet talk away. Victor did not know the hand on his throat belonged to the woman sleeping in his house. He still thought he had choices. That morning, he asked for a divorce. No, not asked, announced. He did it after a dinner party rumor reached him that lenders were meeting without him. He was already frightened. Celeste pushed harder. Evelyn whispered harder. And fear, when fed by pride, becomes theater. So Victor arranged the meeting in the bank's private legal suite. He wanted witnesses. He wanted Amara reduced on paper before the financial humiliation arrived. If he was going to fall, he wanted to throw somebody lower first. That is what weak people do in the seconds before impact. They reach for a neck. Now we are back in the room. Back to the rain. Back to the pen. Victor mistook her silence for surrender one final time. "Sign it," he said, voice harder now. "I'm done carrying you." Amara almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because lies sometimes become so large, they collapse under their own weight. "Carrying me," she said softly. "Yes," he snapped. "This house, this life, this name, everything." The bank director near the window shifted. His name was Daniel Adebayo, 63, precise, watchful. The kind of man who had spent 40 years around rich people and no longer confused volume with authority. He had met Amara privately before the meeting. He had not known Victor's wife was that Amara until she walked in and introduced herself with the documents. Some surprises humble even experienced men. Daniel cleared his throat. "Before any signatures are made, there is a material disclosure this room must acknowledge." Victor frowned. "This is a divorce matter, Daniel. Your role here is procedural." Daniel looked at him for a long second. And there are few things more dangerous than a patient man deciding he no longer needs to protect your illusion. "With respect," Daniel said, "that stopped being true before you entered the room." The lawyer beside Victor straightened. Celeste's smile flickered. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the pearl clutch. Victor laughed once, irritated. "What exactly is that supposed to mean?" Daniel stepped forward and placed a dark folder on the table. You could hear the leather touch the wood. Sometimes the smallest sounds announce the biggest endings. "It means," Daniel said, opening the folder, "that the debt package securing Mensa Urban Holdings was acquired 6 weeks ago by Grey Monarch Capital." Victor stared. "That's impossible." "No," Daniel said. "It was quiet." That line hung in the room like a blade. Victor turned to his lawyer. "Why was I not informed?" "You were informed of the transfer," the lawyer said carefully. "The beneficial owner was shielded under the acquisition structure." Victor looked back at Daniel. "Then who owns Grey Monarch?" Daniel did not answer right away. He looked at Amara. The room followed his eyes. And in that one movement, before a single word was spoken, the temperature changed. Because truth has a sound even before it speaks. It sounds like people suddenly realizing they have been facing the wrong person the whole time. Victor actually smiled then, but it was the wrong kind. Thin, nervous, built from denial. "No," he said. "No. Don't be ridiculous." Amara reached into her handbag and set something small on the table, between the divorce papers and the settlement pen. A brass key. Old. Worn smooth. Simple. Victor looked at it and frowned as if it meant nothing. To her, it meant everything. Quiet hands build doors, loud mouths never see. Daniel's voice came low and clear. Mr. Mensah, the principal owner of Grey Monarch Capital is your wife, Amara Okoye Mensah. No one breathed. Celeste's face emptied first. Evelyn's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Victor stared at Daniel, then at Amara, then at the folder, then at the key, like his mind was running into locked doors one after another and finding no handle. That's not possible, he said again, softer this time, because fear loses volume fast when it meets paperwork. Amara finally touched the papers, not to sign them. She turned them, straightened them, and slid them back across the table toward Victor. A mirror image of what he had done to her, only calmer, only cleaner. You wanted me to sign quickly, she said. Now I think we should all read carefully. Victor stood up so suddenly the chair rolled backward. Amara, what is this? Daniel answered before she did. This is the point where your divorce filing intersects with your default structure. Victor looked lost. Rich people hate looking lost. It ages them instantly. Daniel continued. The controlling debt holder has legal authority over the restructuring path. Given the filing you initiated this morning, certain protective covenants triggered under the family trust and spousal disclosure provisions. In simpler language, the moment you tried to sever this marriage while concealing active financial misrepresentation, your negotiating power collapsed. Celeste whispered, Victor. But she was already leaning away from him. Watch people closely in moments like this. You learn who loves you and who was only renting space near your confidence. Victor turned to Amara. You planned this? No, she said. You did. That was the first real blow. Not because it was loud, because it was true. I tried to protect the employees, she said. I tried to contain the damage. I tried to give you time to tell the truth before the truth told itself. Evelyn found her voice at last. You deceived this family. Amara looked at her. No, I observed it. Evelyn flinched like the word had hands. Daniel opened the folder wider. There is more. Under the revised restructuring terms, the residence, the flagship office, and the voting rights tied to the legacy portfolio now move under transitional control. Victor swallowed. To who? Daniel did not even need to say it now. Everyone knew. But he said it anyway. To Mrs. Mensah. Silence. Heavy silence. The kind that forces every cruel sentence said before it to come back and sit in the room with you. Victor looked at the divorce papers as if they had betrayed him. No, not betrayed. Exposed. There is a difference. He whispered, You owned everything? Amara tilted her head slightly. Not everything. Just enough. Just enough. That is how disciplined people talk about power. They do not brag. They inventory. Victor pulled both hands over his face. Why didn't you tell me? And there it is. The question guilty people always ask when the truth appears. Why didn't you tell me? As if your lie became their crime because they did not interrupt it sooner. Amara answered without heat. Because I wanted one thing in this life that wasn't trying to invoice me for existing. No one moved. Even Daniel looked down then, giving that sentence the respect it deserved. Celeste stood. I think I should go. Of course she did. Storm lovers never stay to help with the roof. Victor grabbed her wrist. Sit down. She pulled free immediately. Not dramatic, not emotional, just fast. Efficient abandonment. "Don't do that," she said coldly. "Not now." And in those 2 words, Victor learned what Amara had known for months. Celeste had admired his access, not his soul. She was gone before the second page of the debt schedule was turned. Evelyn tried next. "Amara, listen to me. Families say things in moments of pressure." Amara's eyes did not soften. "Families also reveal themselves in moments of pressure." That ended Evelyn. Victor sat down slowly, as if his bones had become heavier than his body. He looked smaller now. Not poor. Small. There's a difference there, too. Poor is about resources. Small is about character after the costume tears. Rain slid down the windows in long, thin lines. Daniel placed a final document in front of Amara. "These are the transition approvals." Victor stared at the pen. The same pen he had pushed at her like a command. "If you sign that," he said, "I lose everything." Amara looked at him for a long moment. And what sat on her face was not vengeance. That would have been easier for him. It was disappointment. The clean, quiet kind. The kind that does not scream because it already knows screaming cannot repair what truth just broke. "You lost me long before this room," she said. "This is just the first time paper agreed." Then she picked up the pen. Steady hand, steady breath. The same way she had signed hundreds of deals nobody had ever connected to her name. She signed once, then again, then slid the papers to Daniel. And with those signatures, Victor's father's empire stopped being a story people could pretend was still alive. It became an asset transfer, a controlled unwind, a lesson. Daniel collected the documents and nodded. "It's done." Victor closed his eyes. Evelyn looked 20 years older. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere over the city, late to the moment but fitting all the same. Amara picked up the brass key from the table and closed it in her palm. Victor's voice cracked on the next sentence. "What happens to me now?" There are questions people ask because they want information, and questions people ask because they have finally met consequence. That was consequence speaking. Amara stood. She straightened the cuff of her sleeve, not out of vanity, but because composure is sometimes the last mercy you give yourself in front of people who wanted to see you shaken. "What happens next," she said, "is the part where you live without an audience." Victor looked up at her. Really looked. Maybe for the first time since the day they met. Not at what she wore, not at how quietly she spoke, at the steel inside the silence. But late vision is a useless gift. She turned toward Evelyn. "You taught your son that image could replace integrity. It can't." Then toward the empty chair Celeste had left behind. "And borrowed loyalty always expires." Finally, she looked back at Victor. "You kept saying I didn't belong in your world." "That was your mistake. You were standing in mine so long, you forgot whose floor was under your feet." If you felt that line in your chest, you are not alone. Because some truths arrive like thunder, and some arrive like a woman saying exactly one sentence too late for you to fix anything. Daniel held the door for her, not because she was fragile, because powerful men had finally recognized power without needing it to shout. She stopped at the doorway, half turned, and said one last thing. "My father told me quiet hands build doors, loud mouths never see." Her eyes rested on Victor. "You never noticed I was the one building all the exits." Then she walked out. Not fast, not dramatic, just done. That afternoon, the news moved quietly at first, then all at once. Mensa Urban Holdings had entered controlled restructuring. Legacy assets reassigned. Leadership displaced. Private capital intervention tied to spouse-controlled debt authority. Financial reporters used polished language for messy humiliation. But everyone in Victor's world understood the real story. He had tried to discard the woman who had become the ceiling over his collapse. By evening, calls stopped coming. By morning, invitations dried up. That is another thing people rarely tell you. Fame leaves loudly. Status leaves silently. And silence is much colder. Weeks later, Victor wrote Amara a letter. Not an email, a letter. Men who ruin things often reach for paper when they finally want to sound sincere. He said he had been afraid for years. He said the company had been drowning, and he could not stand the thought of her seeing him fail. He said Celeste made him feel admired. He said his mother filled the room with expectations he had never learned to resist. He said he did not know how to be loved by someone stronger than he was. That line, at least, was true. He did not know. But truth arriving after damage is not the same as wisdom. Amara never answered. Some doors close softly. That doesn't make them less closed. Months later, she moved into a smaller house outside the city. Not because she had to, because peace needs less square footage than performance does. There was a long garden in the back, with stone paths and citrus trees, and enough morning light to make coffee taste honest. On the patio table, she kept the brass key in a small glass dish. A reminder. Not of Victor, of herself. Of the girl who learned early that the world listens too much to noise and not enough to work. One Saturday, Daniel came by with updated files on the employee retention packages and final property conversions. He found her barefoot in the garden, sleeves rolled up, hands in the soil. He smiled. Most people would hire staff for this. Amara brushed dirt from her palms. Most people mistake being served for being alive. Daniel laughed softly and handed her the folder. Everything had settled well. Most employees had been retained under the new structure. The worst damage had been stopped. The buildings with real value had been repaired, refinanced, and reorganized. The rotting parts had been cut away clean. That was the thing she was proudest of. Not taking control. Taking responsibility once control arrived. Daniel glanced at the brass key. What does it open? Amara smiled. The same thing it always did, she said. Perspective. He nodded as if he understood. Maybe he did. Maybe age teaches some people how to hear a sentence twice. After he left, she sat alone for a while and listened to the wind move through the trees. No cameras, no boardroom, no witnesses. Just quiet. Real quiet. Not the kind people accuse you of when they think you have nothing to say. The kind you earn after surviving people who only respected volume. And if you have ever been underestimated, really underestimated, not because people lacked information, but because they looked right at your dignity and called it weakness, then you know this feeling. It is not revenge. It is release. Amara had not won because she was richer. She had been richer all along. She had won because she did not let other people's blindness define her value. She did not break herself explaining her depth to shallow people. She did not beg loud people to become wise. She let time, paper, character, and consequence introduce them properly. That is stronger than anger. that lasts longer too. So if there is a lesson here, it is not marry carefully, though you should. It is not hide your power, though sometimes you must. It is this: never assume the quiet person in the room is powerless. Sometimes they are simply the only one not wasting energy performing. Sometimes they are reading every line while everyone else is rehearsing dominance. Sometimes they are holding the debt, the evidence, the key, and the final say all at once. And sometimes the person you call ordinary is the only reason your life has not collapsed already. Victor learned that too late. Do not learn it that way. If this story hits you, like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who has been underestimated lately. And tell me in the comments, at what exact moment did you realize Victor was finished? Was it when Daniel opened the folder? When Amara set the brass key on the table? Or when she said, "This is the first time paper agreed"? I'll see you in the next one.